Hello and welcome to River Darling Art and ASMR. And today I want to talk about something that's quite personal to a lot of people, a lot of creatives, and that is creative block, artist block, writer's block, whatever it is you want to call it. I wanted to start by saying that I understand it's difficult when we live in a society that puts so much precedent on money and productivity. And that's especially relevant when you begin to monetize a passion. It begins to resemble work, it begins to resemble duty and tedium, and you forget to follow your creative processes, and you begin to look more at how can you gain more audience? How can you play to the various ways that different social media sites will expose you to more people? It's difficult. And I'm not going to say that it's not difficult. I had a dear friend ask me quite a few years ago now, how do I overcome creative block? And they've moved on to doing wonderful, wonderful intuitive work. And I'm really proud of them. But one of the things that I remember saying was to use products that cost less. And that doesn't mean that you shouldn't use something that enables you to produce better work. For instance, I firmly believe that when you use colour pencils, the quality of the pencil really does affect the richness of the work. But if you are struggling to accept your worth when you're producing work, one of the things that I find is really good to overcome that is if you find yourself a scrap piece of paper or the back of something, or an old denim jacket you're about to throw away, or that PU bag that's falling apart, and just, take out your medium, go to town. What have you got to lose? It's going in the bin anyway. Some of my favourite works were created on a wardrobe that I had when I was at university, and it was enormous. There's no other living space that I've lived in since that I could have fit this wardrobe into. And when I dismantled it, I kept some of the larger panels and I painted on them. And I've done that since, I think, with quite a few pieces. This piece, it's behind me, actually. It's on my chimney breast in my living room. I love it to bits. I actually took it to a professional framer and had it framed, and it was literally just the back of a piece of cardboard, not cardboard, but sort of compressed wood. And they framed it, and it's got the proper paper lining on the back, and it's gorgeous. So when you create something on something that's reclaimed or rubbish or absolute trash, it doesn't mean that what you produce is worthless. It just means you're not losing anything by trying. You're not losing that sheet of your expensive paper. You're not losing that sheet in that sketchbook that you're going to have to keep forever. And if you don't do well, you're going to worry, am I going to have to look at that page forever? You have nothing to lose. You only have something to gain. And playing like that, it's a form of rebellion in its own way, when even in your own mindset you've really built up, like, I need to do well, I need this piece to go well, I need just all of the pressures. You are absolutely rebelling when you say, I'm going to paint something on the back of this chair, I'm going to just sit down and make some music, and I'm not going to record it, and I'm going to beat it out on the wall, on the bin. I'm not a musician. See, I am not a musician. I really wish I I was. I can use one hand. I just feel like there's ways that you can take away the pressure that enable you to say, I'm worth this process. I often say I feel sometimes like I'm shouting into the wind. I think a lot of us feel like we're shouting into the wind sometimes. I mean, even people who you would regard as successful, still feel like they're shouting in the wind. And the pressure, again, must be, enormous. I just don't want to think of anyone letting themselves go, letting that side of themselves go. And when we talk about the emphasis on monetization, the emphasis on workload, we live in a society where we are very often sort of, the value of our worth is attributed to the role we perform or our job. And a lot of us don't have a creative outlet as our main occupation. So when we are experiencing creative block and we are not producing, that sense of who you are can shift. And I think it becomes sort of more difficult to say, well, actually, no, I am an artist, I am a dancer, I am a writer, when you still have to get up and show up for your 9 to 5. You still got to go there, you still got to put the work in, and that sort of sense of identity does kind of shift, I think. And that's not true. It's not true at all. People take hiatuses for so many reasons. You're working that job because you have to. You don't necessarily love it. You can still find value in it, but you don't necessarily love it. And I think that is an important distinguishing. I've actually mildly lost my train of thought now. Another technique. Do something different. Do something you absolutely know you can't do. When I had quite a creative block, I downloaded a program that would enable me to draw with pixels. And I actually really loved it. I really like the mirroring aspect. So you can ask it to mirror straight down the middle and you can just draw monsters. And I love that because it was a real way that, and also because I was taking it so far away from my medium and so far away from what my medium is normally capable of, I was just enjoying creating monsters and enjoying watching the other cursor that I wasn't controlling, on my mirror side, just sort of dancing away. I found that really useful. And I don't think that's necessarily pigeonholed in a sort of, do you have a little bit of cash floating around to buy like a new program or something like that? You've got a left hand, haven't you? That sounds so simplistic, but there's something really freeing in sort of, yes, your left hand is not going to be, I'm assuming you're right-handed, your non-dominant hand is not going to be as strong unless you're ambidextrous, in which case I'm really sorry, this isn't the advice for you. You have that mentality that like, I'm not going to produce my best works right now. So let's just play with this process. And at the end of it, instead of going, I don't like that, I'm worthless, I hate this, I'm not as good as I used to be, like, why can't I produce XYZ? You'd go, I did that with my left hand. Another thing that I love and is often used as like an ice-breaking exercise is continuous line drawing. So just put your pencil down, and just don't lift it up until you're finished. Or you can look straight at it and just keep following your hand movement until it finishes. It can change quite a bit depending on whether you're using something that will adapt to the pressure. So whether you're using a biro, which biros are so understated. I do like a biro. You can use a biro. They're gorgeous. Some of the work people make with biros. The only thing that I would say, like, with biros is, this is so not ASMR when I say silly things like their longevity. They're not very light fast. So I would highly recommend, if you make a fantastic biro piece, scan it. Please. Pencil, of course. And an interesting one is often something like a fine liner. And a fine liner will not let you vary the pressure. So I think that's quite interesting. And if you're using something like a fine liner, you can change the thickness of the fine liner. So you can start off by doing like a 0.05 and going for that, and going up to a 0.3. So you're sort of layering up with like bigger and bigger, more dominant lines that follow the form. And you're really finding that shape, and you're finding that shape in a very sort of slow way, in the same way you might if you sketch. I, for instance, sketch with something like a yellow and then something like a blue, and then I'll go in with my actual lines. So it's kind of very similar in that way, that you're finding forms very slowly. What else is there that I like to do? Or I would recommend something that you could do? Oh yeah, feel your face. So this one's really cool. So I would recommend your ear. And I would recommend go like as big as possible. If you've got some charcoal or something, and an A1 sheet of paper or an A1 back of a wardrobe, or if you haven't got charcoal, if your kids have got some chalks lying around, something like that, or even oil pastels. I give them a bad rap because I love the smell, but they're so messy. Feel your ear and draw while you're feeling. So sort of feel and don't look at it. Don't try and imagine what an ear feels like. I mean, your brain knows what an ear feels like. It's going to argue with you the whole time. But just draw what you feel. And then that can extend to your face. And a really, really, really interesting thing to do with this is your mouth. But feel with your tongue. And draw what you can feel with your tongue. That is a really, really interesting one. And the bigger and bolder and nastier the line making you can do, the better. I highly recommend something like charcoal sticks rather than like a charcoal pencil, because then you can really you can hold them sideways, you can snap them small, scrape them again sideways, you can always buff them out. Charcoal's a really good one actually for breaking out of things. I have a longevity. There's a pattern here. I like my longevity. The existential dread doesn't particularly approve of me using media that doesn't last, until the universe collapses. So we could just call this like an average discussion where I occasionally pick up things that appear on camera. But yeah, no. So those are some really interesting things to do. And just get out. I know a lot of creative funks come at the same time as, the symptoms of depression, SAD syndrome, and things like that. If you even take your commute to work or the things that you have to do, I'm not assuming that you have pleasure to be like, oh, yippee, I'm going out to the beach, to observe the way the world frays into the ocean. I'm assuming that you're driving to work, and if you can just hold a thought while you're driving, so think I'm going to think about the colours I see. I'm going to think about potential narratives of the people that I drive past. I'm going to wind my windows down and I'm going to listen. I'm going to listen to the noise of the conversations I pass, or the roadworks I pass. I'm going to listen to the sound of my tyre turning. I'm going to listen to the sound of the engine. I'm going to listen to the sound of that wind as it funnels past the car and what gets sort of shaved off into the car by the glass. Holding a creative way of thinking, I think, can be a good way to recharge yourself, or to keep that connection to that side of your identity going when it's very difficult to be productive. So those are some things that I would genuinely recommend. The mouth thing. Please do the mouth thing. Please do the mouth thing, because it's just stupid. I've got like a massive A1 of the inside of my mouth somewhere in sort of the mountains of work that will either be sort of put in a skip one day, or someone will be like, oh, we found an original. That's a little ramble, and I hope you might have gained something from that. If not, I hope it's just nice to have a little bit of company, and I will decide very much whether this is a conversation or ASMR. I think it's a conversation. I don't know. That's why I'm River Darling Art and ASMR, so I can finish a video and go, what did I just do? I don't know what that was. Thank you very much for spending time with me. Thank you very much for your time. Stay creative. I will find a sign out move that isn't that weird thing. Can I do like a little Can I do like a little Team Rocket thing? I don't know. But anyway, take care of yourselves. Salute. What's that doing? Bye bye.